coming to you with the most requested video that I've ever had, and that is fingerless gloves on the Addi Express knitting machine. I've come up with two versions. One I'm going to call the beginner version, and it's strictly, but the difference is the bind offs here in the thumb. The other one is called the advanced version, and it can be a little tricky. Now, I'm still not super pleased with either of these. This one is a very poorly bound off knitting ribbing here, but remember, I'm new to needle knitting, so this was just to represent it for those of you who can do better. And this one is done with crochet edging, which is much more in my skill set right now. And one of the best things about our yarn community is we have more than just two heads to put together for ideas. I'm thinking that with this advanced version that we could actually crochet easier around here to bring a thumb up. You know, you would add the crochet and then you could pick up with knitting needles if you needed to, but I don't know how you'd pick it up with knitting needles neatly with this kind of bind off. But anyway, my point being is that if you have an idea, share it with me on how we can improve these. But in the meantime, they'll get the job done. I want to thank Laverne Blair for this basic pattern. She had posted this on the Facebook group, Addi King Loomers and Knits, and I took it and tweaked it a little bit. I had added some extra yarn so that you could do the ribbing or the finishing for the top and the bottom. And then I changed things a little bit for the advanced one to finish off the thumb in a different way. So thanks, Laverne, and let's get started. Now let's have a word about sizing. Okay, you can see how this fits on me. This is 2 rows of crochet on this side, and I did 3 rows of very poorly done ribbing with a bind off edge. Would be the 4th, I guess. Do you count that? I don't even know if you count that. Okay, but my hand size is basically a medium. However, if you measure it for fine gloves, it's called a medium large. So that lets you know in case you're wondering. Here are some measurements. If you want to put your hand down like this and then trace over it, that would be the most consistent way, I think, for us to measure. These are the measurements that I got. So from the tip of my finger down to my wrist right here is 11.5 inches. So that tells you how big my hand is. Now, if you're going to measure for some fine gloves, they tell you to get a measuring tape and measure all the way around your hand, right about here. But you have to be careful when you do that, because if you cup your hand, you're going to get an inconsistent or inaccurate measurement. So you have to keep your hand flat when you do it. And mine, well, see, I didn't do it. My hand when flat is about 7¼ inches, which is what I measure here, or 19 centimeters. So that gives you an idea of about what my hand size is. If you have larger or wider hands than mine, then I think it stretches pretty well for this 22 needle. Or of course you could use the larger Addi, do flat panels and seam them up, which would probably be even easier, because for the thumb you would just seam here and up here and leave it open. So that would be pretty handy dandy. Okay, so to start with, we're going to begin our cast on with waste yarn at the first black needle that arrives at the yarn feeder. So, I have my waste yarn, and I'm going to cast on as usual, looking for that first black needle. There it is. Pull some extra yarn there. And as stated, this is an intermediate advanced Addi project. because you really need to be familiar with the way the machine works. When I first started, I had no idea. Couldn't needle knit. There were hardly any videos, and I would not have understood this at all. Okay, hang on to that tail, get it going. And the instructions say complete 5 rounds. That's an arbitrary number. Some people like just 2 or 3. I like 5, 4 or 5. Just because it gives me a nice good base to work with. Okay, there's my 5 rounds. And I clip just a little bit off and follow the instructions. Okay. Pull several yards of main color and drop into the center of the Addi. Remove waste yarn from feeder and replace with the main yarn at the beginning black needle. You will later use the extra yarn to hand knit or crochet a ribbing edging for the cuff. Okay, so this is pretty much just like changing colors. I am using some Vanna's Choice. This is in the color, in the color Fern. Oops, I forgot to pull out my extra yarn. Okay, this says several yards. I use my nose to extended left arm as a measurement. And that is basically a yard. That's 3. I'm going to do 4 yards for good measure, just because I have no idea how much I really need. Put it in the yarn feeder, catch it, and I always hold the 2 pieces together when I change colors, or in this case, add my main yarn. Pull it a little tight so you don't drop any stitches. Alright, my instructions say complete 30 rounds and stop before the first black needle with an exclamation point. So apparently that's important. So I'll clear out my numbers and I'll begin 30 rounds. "28, 29, and now it said stop before the first." There we go. I'm going to stop right here. Alright, instructions. Step 5, crochet cast off the 3 black needles. Now this is what's making it an intermediate to advanced pattern, because this is a tricky part. Alright, I pulled in closer so you can see what I'm doing here for this crochet cast on, and I'm actually walking to the back of the machine because I find it to be easier. You're going to remove your yarn, and you want to keep it on the white one, but what we're going to do is something different on this first black one. So I've got a crochet hook here which is a 5mm. I would say this is about the smallest you would need, but it's really not that important for gauge or anything, because your gauge is determined by the loop reaching across to the next needle, and you're going to be pulling it that way, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, so what we need to do is crank it until this drops down as if we were to cast off. Did you hear it pop? Okay. We take our red needle. Now this is the way I do it because I can't get the crochet hook to pick up the loop. So I put my loop here, I put my crochet hook here to keep the stitch secure. Let me see if I need to turn this light on. See if that helps any. Oh wait, that's the white one. That's this one I want. Okay, so I'm putting it right there. And I'm going to lift up the stitch off the teeth and put it onto my crochet hook. Okay. Then I'll wrap my yarn around. This is, I hope you can see what I'm doing because I'm very awkward with the camera and everything. And I'm pulling through for a crochet chain. Actually, I want it to get off of that red fin. Okay. Pulling through for a crochet chain. Okay, I will make the chain as big as it takes me to reach over here to this next one. So, keeping it in the loop, I'm going to crank back. Well, I'm standing behind it, so I'm cranking backwards. You crank forward, really, till it drops down. Now, you see, that's how far I want the loop to be, right? Till it gets to that. I use my needle to place the loop onto the crochet hook and pull it through. Okay, then I like to go underneath, and I will do a chain stitch. You may have to kind of help it with your fingers. Okay, and we move on to the next stitch. Sorry, I'm bumping the camera. Holding it in place with the crochet hook, scooping it off, placing it on the crochet hook, pull it through that loop, and then I make a chain. Ta-da! And then I'm going to place it onto that white one. Make sure it catches. You might need to lift it up a little bit to make sure it's actually underneath the tooth. And then we put the yarn back into the yarn feeder, and it should catch this one next. Okay, so what I just did was I completed 6. I reloaded it and closed the yarn feeder. So we did the crochet cast off, reloaded it, and proceed around slowly and stop at the first black needle. So, see, it caught right there. That's good. And we'll proceed around slowly, and we're going to stop here. Make sure that that loop goes down around the red teeth. Make sure that your loop drops down on those 2 teeth on either side for that white one. And here's what we do to cast on so we can get that same chain effect. I had a hard time getting the right angle for the video, so I'm going to talk you through this first in snapshots so you'll know what to look for when the video starts. But first of all, you're going to remove that yarn from the yarn feeder, and it's going to go around the back of the black needle. And then you bring it around to the front, and then again around the back, so you've actually looped the black needle. Then you need to shove that loop you just made down around the black needle. On either side there are 2 red teeth. And if you'll look in this picture right here, you can see the 2 red teeth on either side of this particular white needle and how the loop is pushed down. So that's what you're doing behind that yarn feeder on the black needle. Then you have to bring the loose yarn around again, around the front, and that will act as your knit stitch. So you see how it's coming around the front and then ends in the back. So that is you manually making a knit stitch. All right, make sure you go over your white one. You're going to go around the back of the black needle, come out the other side, and shove it down to where it's around both of those red teeth on either side of the needle, and then hook it like a regular catch, the way it normally catches under the needle right there. Okay, so we go down, we proceed around, make sure that bottom one is on the sides of the red teeth, and then we go around the next one. Oh golly, I'm at the wrong angle. Let me try this angle. Okay, so I go around the back, around the front, I'm shoving it down low, and I go around again so that it catches the teeth, and I proceed to knit. Okay, and you can see that that one caught just as it's supposed to. Around the back, around the front, down around the teeth, and look right here, it helps to get it under that red fin. Got it on either side of those teeth. I'm going to use my needle to help me do that. And then catch it in the hook. Proceed slowly. You want to make sure that one's knitting correctly, and you want to make sure this one knits correctly. So here we just catch that as normal. Catch the white one as normal, and you put it back in the feeder, close it up, and we can continue on. So let's see what the instructions say. Complete 7 more rounds of the main color and then switch to waste yarn, but do not cut the main yarn. Just toss the ball in the center of the Addi. You'll retrieve it later to hand knit or crochet a ribbing edging over the knuckles. And then note, depending on the size of your hand, 15 was the original number. I changed it to 7 for my hand, but it may be different for yours. It may be too long to add that. So you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. I can't help you with sizing from here. So I'm going to continue on with 7 rounds. Oh, sorry. Okay, that's 1, but look, you see how the loop caught up high? I need to shove it down. Shove it down on either side of the red teeth. And all is well. Well, that should have been 1, but I didn't clear my counter out properly. Okay, and here it seems to be working very well. Okay, I did 1 round with the counter messed up, so I'm going to stop at 6. And so here it told us not to disconnect our yarn, to throw it down in the middle. And you can just shove it down through and let it drop if you have enough. If it's too big, just put it across the back, and then you'll just have to hold this yarn out of the way. And then we reattach some waste yarn. Always hold that. Tie loosely, because we do want to remove that waste yarn later. So I'm making a knot. And I'm going to do about 5 rows. Okay, I've done my 5 rows, so I want to release it from the machine. And this is the best part about using waste yarn at the end. You just hold your yarn over to the side, close your yarn feeder, remove the cat hair, and go around twice. And it just releases itself from the machine. Pretty handy dandy. Okay. Now you can probably see you have a nice chained edge here where your thumb goes, which is a nice finish. And you have a chain if you want to create a little more warmth up your hand. You can actually catch those crochet chains to add on. Okay, then what we want to do is pick up these stitches right here and knit some ribbing or crochet and edging for this and for the wrist. Alright, so I got myself organized here. This is the top where the knuckle ribbing will go, and of course at the bottom where the wrist ribbing will go. So we want to pick it up and put it on our needles. Now, because you're doing 1 by 1 ribbing, it's not going to matter if you knit with this being your outside or that being your outside. It just doesn't make any difference. You have 22 needles, so you'll have 22 stitches on your hand knitting needles. So you can only do a 1 by 1 ribbing to make it come out even. So I'm going to pick mine up. I mean, if you feel like you really need to knit with the right side on the outside, then you would pick it up, you know, one leg at a time. You can see the stitch right here. You pick up one leg and go around like this. Me, I find it much easier to work from the inside, which is why I didn't press this flat to make it easy for you. I mean, to stay out of the way, because it's easier when it flips around, so you can see it. All right, now here's where our working yarn ends, and it's actually, this stitch right here is a combination of waste yarn and main color yarn. So I don't like to work in that stitch. I like to go to the previous row right here and call that my first one. And see how much easier it is to see where to pick up when you work from the inside. So you do this until you've got 22 stitches on your needles, and then depending upon whether you are magic looping or double pointing, you divide those as evenly as possible around your needles, and you continue on with your run ball run ribbing, binding off with your favorite stretchy bind off, and you're finished. Now for a crochet bind off, the same holds true. You can look at this outside and see that last stitch going behind your waste yarn, and you can pick up one stitch at a time. I find that more difficult to do, so I like to do mine from the inside. And to me, it doesn't make any difference. A single crochet, I think, looks great on both sides of the fabric. As I just pointed out in the knitting version, your last stitch is a combination of main color yarn and waste yarn. And that's confusing, so I don't like to start with that. I like to move up to this one right here. Now, what size crochet hook? I'm using a USI or a 5.5 millimeter. Again, that's going to be your personal preference. It depends on how loose you crochet or tightly and what you prefer. So you may have to experiment. And of course, crocheting, it's so easy because if you don't like it, you just rip back out. Just don't remove your waste yarn until you're completely finished. So what we do here is I'm going to do at least one row of single crochet. That's really what I prefer, is to put a base. So what I'm going to do is go in right here and pull up a loop. Okay, so that's my starting point right there. And then I'm going to do a single crochet in the next one, and the next one, and I'm going to continue on in this fashion. Now, if you want to, you can continue doing a spiral single crochet all the way around, or you can switch to a front post back post double crochet to have more of a ribbing effect. The choice is up to you.